ho. All right, we're live finally. We've been live for about 15 minutes, but we can finally get into it. I should have had all this stuff up, but I don't right now. All right. So welcome everybody to this live stream, but it's also going to be a video later on that I'm going to chop up and turn into something a little more watchable. But I thought it would be a good idea this time to do this live just because it's an opportunity. If there is anybody interested in this topic that does want to pop in and ask questions, they're free to. And I can try to answer them to the best of my knowledge. But let's see what is on the docket today. So we have a few things that we're going to go over. I've made a list, and we're going to go through them all. We're going to go starting with some experiences that people have brought back to me and stuff that I've read online about what is happening in Nepal. I guess just a very brief summary of what has happened in the past month, 2 months. So around the beginning of March, Nepal's tourism board made an announcement that they were going to change their trekking, the way that visitors coming to Nepal could trek there. For those that are unaware, Nepal for a very long time was considered a trekker's paradise because it was somewhere that you could go and you didn't need a guide necessarily. Now, that has all of the positives and negatives associated with that. And one of the positives is that no matter what your experience was, you could go to the country. And specifically experienced trekkers, those who had either been to Nepal before or had experience trekking in other areas of the world, in wherever, could go, and they didn't have to worry about hiring a guide. Hiring a guide presents a number of I don't want to say issues, but just it seemingly restricts you in what you're able to do. So for example, hiring a guide is obviously more expensive. So you're paying for, and that's sort of the thing that comes to everybody's mind, I think, immediately when you are planning a trek. Having to factor in one less thing for that trek financially is always nice. And I'm a big proponent of that. My very first video on YouTube was all about counting how much a cost in Nepal usually treks, and that calculation in that video, I did not take into account a guide, because the only time I've ever used a guide in Nepal was on my very first trek there, and then 2 other times actually. But those were both with other people that had never been on a trek before, and the guide also doubled as a porter. I'm a big proponent of carrying all my own supplies, but some people aren't, and then they hire porters and guides, and I was with 2 people, or 2 other groups that decided to do that. Ironically, all of this happened in the Annapurna region, which we'll get into later, but all 3 of those guided treks were in Annapurna, actually. So anyway, the big issue here, the big thing that people don't like is one, it's costly, so there is that. But even that by itself wouldn't necessarily be a problem. I'm secretly a part of a few Facebook groups that are all about trekking in Nepal, and the sentiment, it seems like, in a lot of these groups and even in comments that I've gotten, I think on YouTube, but maybe elsewhere, is that people would rather just be able to pay a flat price than have to also hire a guide. People seem to be willing to pay a little bit more to get into the park, maybe paying per day, permits, whatever. But the Nepal Tourism Board has deemed it necessary to make trekkers, foreign trekkers only, hire a guide. This doesn't count for Nepalis. And again, I'm retreading a lot of the things that I said in my original video about it, but just in case there's anybody listening to this recorded stream about what's going on, I want to mention that. So, yeah, so that was one thing. And then I think trekkers going to Nepal specifically, because it has in recent history been such a free place to go for trekking, got really upset. And like a lot of the sentiment that I found, again, in a lot of these groups, a lot of these trekking groups, is that people felt very entitled to not having a guide. And my take on it is, I understand Nepal needs to take advantage of, they need to take advantage of trekkers somehow. That's a huge market for Nepal. And but the question is was this the way to do it? And was this the way to do it? And is it really, because ostensibly it's all about it's like 75% about safety, and then about 25% about creating an influx of money for guides. In fact, we can start off by taking a look at the original letter. And actually, while we're here, I'm just going to expand this a little bit, and we're going to put up our checklist of what we're going over today. So this is our table of contents. I'll read this letter, finish my thoughts, and then we'll start going over that checklist. Actually, we'll do that in a little bit. Okay, so the Nepal Tourism Board press release, March 9th, 2023, revised provision for trekking in Nepal. First line, in order to ensure the safety and security of visitors trekking in protected areas in the mountains of Nepal, Nepal Tourism Board has revised procedures of the Trekking Information Management System, or TIMS. With the new provision, all trekkers are required to obtain services of licensed trekking guide and to obtain TIMS card through authorized trekking agencies registered with the government of Nepal. The new provision shall come into effect post March 31st, 2023. The decision has been taken the decision has been taken subsequent to a series of discussions with the trekking and expedition stakeholders and relevant trade unions in Nepal to help mitigate adverse incidents like getting lost en route, health issues, and/or natural disasters, etc. With this implementation, the trekkers will have immediate access to professional support system and will help in addressing the challenges of rescue operations in case of any unwarranted situation. In addition to safety, the new provisions will create employment for workers in the tourism sector of Nepal and discourage unauthorized trekking operations in the country. The fees for the TIMS card have been revised to Nepali rupee 1,000 per person, which is about $8. For SARC citizens, which is the South Asian something something something. SARC is basically, actually, we can look that up. Let me. SARC just basically includes a bunch of countries in Southeast Asia. Uh, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So this is India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. So it's like 7 countries. These countries, though, they still need. Anyway, SARC citizens and. Okay, so the fees for the TIMS card have been revised to 1,000 Nepali rupees per person for SARC citizens and 2,000 Nepali rupees for the rest of the world. The provision for diplomatic missions in Nepal will remain as before. However, accompaniment by licensed guide shall be applicable. Detailed guidelines for the same shall be published shortly. NTB is positive that this step paves way for sustainable, responsible, and eco-friendly tourism in the Himalayan region of Nepal. So, like I was saying, what was I saying? The first, the biggest paragraph, basically looking at this letter, it just seems like it's mostly about safety. There is stuff in here about, in addition to safety, the new provision will create employment for workers in the tourism sector of Nepal. There's that little bit thrown in here, but this second paragraph is really focused on the safety situation, making sure that trekkers are safe. Looking into it, it doesn't seem that trekking in Nepal is any more dangerous than anywhere else in the world. In fact, it might even be safer because the way that Nepal trekking and the communities on the trails are set up is probably more safer than a lot of places in the world. The chances of getting lost, obviously this changes when you get into mountaineering and going off trail, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about trekking, and NTB's guidelines on this reflect this, as we'll see later, because of the areas that they've chosen to make a guide necessary. So that's the other thing that got trekkers kind of in a kind of got their goat a little bit, kind of got them upset, is because Nepal's tourism board is like, this is all about safety. This is just to keep you safe, okay? We're not doing this for any other reason. But then first of all, everything I just said, the trekking in Nepal is not very dangerous. We can look at any numbers outside of mountaineering. I don't really even know what it is, mountaineering. Mountaineering is probably dangerous. That's probably true in Nepal. And there are probably a decent amount of people that get lost doing it or going off trail, whatever. But the main trails in Nepal are not that dangerous, and that is reflected in the numbers, just in just some basic research on the topic. Number two, safety in Nepal. What was the second thing? Hold on. Number two, it's all about safety, but it doesn't. This rule does not apply to Nepali citizens who also trek in Nepal. Foreigners are not the only people who trek in Nepal. Tons of Nepalis, especially nowadays. The opportunities for Nepalis are opening up a little bit more in the country, and I think travel is being encouraged to Nepali people. Um, so they make this decision uh, for everybody else, but apparently Nepali people are not important enough to have a guide, which I don't know. That it seems very strange to me that you would make that standard for everybody else, but then not for Nepalis. But okay, so that's basically what's going on there. That's why people are upset. This was the you know this was the flashpoint essentially, and so this comes out and nobody knows what it means, and everybody's trying to figure out how this is going to affect trekking in Nepal. Which brings us to, let me turn on my checklist now. So this is what we're going to go over today. It's not super comprehensive, but it will help us, it'll help people wanting to go to Nepal and trek in Nepal understand what they're getting into. So we've got updates from commenters. I have those lined up. We're going to go over the official guidelines that and the frequently asked questions that NTB has posted themselves. We're going to visit the the Trekkers Association something, I can't remember, of Nepal website. That's basically for a laugh. And then finally, we're going to go over what I think personally are probably the most likely destinations that you can go in Nepal and not have to deal with this new guideline. So let's just get into it. First off, I'm not going to show any of these people on. I'm not going to show any of these commenters on stream because I don't know. I don't want to. Draw any attention to any unwanted attention to anybody. But I do want to take their. What do you call it? Testimony, I guess you would say. So, one of the people that commented had a ticket for Nepal that was going to be on sometime in April, and so this is after the new guidelines were to go into effect. And they were thinking about going somewhere else. And I actually encouraged them to go. I was still pretty... and I still am. I think people should try to go to Nepal. I think people should try trekking in Nepal. Even if if it's your first time, you can if it's your first time going to Nepal, you can factor in the need for, you can make excuses for the need for needing a guide, essentially. You might be unfamiliar with the landscape. Getting to and from the beginnings of treks for a first timer is can be pretty daunting if you've never dealt with developing countries and tourism in developing countries. That's probably a good idea, is to try and get a guide. Let me just I want to see something. Hold on. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure my stream audio was coming through. So, okay. Uh, so you can probably make excuses for yourself. You know, you don't know the country. I'll just hire a guide, whatever. I need a guide the first time I go. Sure. So I didn't want to discourage this person from going. Nepal is still an incredibly beautiful country, and there's still a lot to do there. But you know, this can definitely put it down, and especially too because obviously this is the way Nepal would have done this: is you give people a month. You know, people have been planning this trek for probably, you know, 6 to 8 months before going. And then the Nepal Tourism Board is like, yeah, and by the way, in 3 weeks, you need a guide. So you probably have planned all this out and planned it from a financial standpoint as well. And then come to find out, you need to spend another, you know, depending on the length of your trek, probably a couple $100 on a guide. You know, it's so stupid. It's such a dumb thing to have done, but it is so in line with everything else that happens in Nepal. But from a bureaucratic standpoint, I mean, okay, so I asked them what trek they were looking to go on, and they were headed towards the Annapurna circuit, Annapurna Base Camp plus Annapurna circuit. That's about, you know, that's a couple weeks long. That's a couple weeks long for that trek, and they went. They went and they reported back to us. So thank you, this commenter, for doing that. We really appreciate any info we can get at this point because nobody knows what's happening. So they say, and this is verbatim, I'm here in Nepal now, and I can say that restrictions are not currently applied. It is said, or it is told that from the 15th of April, they will start to plan how to apply the restrictions. So no problem right now to do the Annapurna circuit. This person got there on, I think, April, you know, beginning of April, the first couple days of April. And were able to check what was going on with all of this. We got a couple other commenters asking questions, including myself and one other person were asking questions about this. The other commenter asked, "Hi, thanks for the response. Could you check currently, as I shall be there by the 22nd for Annapurna Circuit? Is the guide mandatory?" And they got back to us. New update. Today we went to get the permits for Annapurna at the Tourist Service Center. So, Tourist Service Center, I believe this person is referencing the one in Kathmandu. I don't know of I know there is another like permit center in Pokhara, but I am assuming if you type in Tourist Service Center on Google Maps, it will take you to the one in Kathmandu. So I'm assuming he's talking about the one in Kathmandu. First, the guy told us that it is mandatory to have a porter to do the trekking and said that unless we have a porter, we would not be able to trek the mountains. After some time, he said that only the EBC was okay, Everest Base Camp, Solukhumbu region. He looked like a person with authority there. He didn't look friendly at all. We left and later decided to give it a second try, but this time we went straight to the office. The guy there was very kind, and he didn't ask for a porter. He also told us that the TIMs now can only be obtained through an agency where they make you hire a porter, but he told us not to buy it because they shouldn't ask for it. So this is very interesting. There's a lot of like insight here. So, first of all, the fact that TIMs can only be obtained through these companies hiring guides out is pretty interesting. It feels, I don't know, you know, it feels like there's a lot of room for people to just start giving out Tim's cards. Uh, so for example, like say there's an office where you know, you go to get this Tim's card and hire a porter, and you tell them, I feel like that. Listen, this is not advice or anything. I'm not telling people what to do. I just feel like there is an opportunity there for somebody to be like, for somebody to say something. You know, go into that office and be like, hey, you know, I'll pay extra to not have this guide. What treks don't have these Tim's checkpoints, and just like pay the fee, or see, that's probably what. Yeah, I feel like that's gonna happen. I mean, that because like, hey, I'll, you know, how many days am I trekking? I'm trekking like, you know, I'm trekking for 15 days. What's the cost? What's it gonna cost this porter, or what is it gonna cost this guide to be with me for 15 days? 15 days. Okay. $200? Okay, I'll pay $200. Can he not come with me, and can you just write me a Tim's permit for the region that I'm going, where you know, as the, you know, this guide operator, where there are no Tim's checkpoints. I feel like that's probably going to happen. This is not advice. I would not do this. This is dishonest. Uh, it is also probably illegal, or not. I don't even know if it's illegal in Nepal to do something like that. But I can absolutely see some sort of network like that happening, and then you're going to get these guide companies that, or online, you're going to be able to find these guide companies that are willing to do this for you. So that's interesting. I kind of read past that the first time that I read that comment. Told us that but he told us not to buy it because they shouldn't ask for it. So this person did not buy the Tim's card. And it's also, you know, and this, okay, so first of all, this was like 3 weeks ago, about right at the beginning of April. It was also before it was being implemented on the 15th. So in theory, this guy should have had no issues. So his response to the other commenter: in our hotel, they were very helpful, and they told us that they will start creating the plan on 15th of April. I don't know how long it will take. I guess they will be more and more insisting on this with the time. If I were you, I would come with a plan B to do anything in Solukhumbu, which we'll talk about later. Probably you will be able to do the Annapurna, but I can't guarantee it. Our hotel is the Avatar Kathmandu Hotel. Shout out to them, because they helped this guy. I recommend staying there so they can help you. I heard that people from other hotels are saying hikers... Oh, I heard that people from other hotels are saying to hikers that the porter is mandatory. So, like, I mean, it all depends on that's a lot of tourism in Nepal. A lot of it depends on who you know and where you stay and how much they're willing to help you and how friendly they are. This guy vouches for the Avatar Kathmandu Hotel, so we throw it over to you. Recommended from this guy. Okay. Next comment. New update. We had no problem in Garapani with our permits. They didn't ask for a porter or the Tims, but today at the police check at Korokupar, right before Chame, they asked for the porter. They seem really decided to not let us pass without a porter. After a lot of talking, they let us pass, but this was a bad moment. They told us that they will not let us pass in the next one. I guess they try to intimidate people to hire a porter, and I think they will get more and more restrictive with the pass of the days. So that was his last comment, and I did actually I responded to him with another question, but since he hasn't responded, and that was 12 days ago, I am assuming that he made it. I think he made it. Because he's probably in an area. Yeah, you know, who is, who is he to have to respond to me? I'm just assuming he would have gotten back to me because he had been communicating. He doesn't have to. He might have the trek might have ended, but I think if there are any updates, he would have told me, or he would have commented again. So breaking this down, this is not this commenter's fault, but it is very difficult to know exactly where any of these locations are, because I looked them up. Garapani, that could be, honestly, that could be anywhere. I feel like there are probably 100 different places in Nepal named Garapani, and even around the Annapurna circuit. And looking on, and again, not his fault, but it could be spelt wrong. It could have like the long A. It could have any of the long vowels. Garapani, all of the locations. Chame, Garapani, Korokupar. I couldn't find any of them, so I don't know if he's going. I don't know if they're going from east to west or west to east. It's difficult to say. Typically, people go from east to west on the Annapurna circuit. But I'm gonna just take a guess here, and this person was able to do the Annapurna circuit. But as they point out, it seems like those restrictions are tightening. Nepal. So the biggest issue seems to be with the Annapurna region. As people know, or maybe not know, Annapurna is the most trekked region in Nepal, for both foreign and domestic trekkers. So, it's not surprising that with this new rule that Annapurna would be clamping down on it more. Annapurna also has a lot more infrastructure than most of the other trekking regions. I would wager that Everest probably has more, but Annapurna is so easy to get to. And a lot of the area around it is because it's so accessible. And even up behind, there's a new road, I'm pretty sure. We can move over to Google Maps. I have a lot of this stuff bookmarked for today. But we can take a look at Annapurna. Just looking at the Annapurna region. This is Annapurna here, basically, the basic outline. But you have this road that goes all the way up and behind these mountains to Manang, which is a pretty substantial village, where you would hike from there to Tilicho Lake. It also has the highway going up to Mustang. So that whole area is super accessible and probably has the infrastructure to support this new initiative. I would almost think that the entire new rule was made for Annapurna, because we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but a lot of these areas do not have TIMS infrastructure. Okay. There was one other commenter. Oh yeah, I'll shout this guy out. I mean, he's bigger than I am. His YouTube channel is bigger than I am. But Destination Hopper, he asked a question I think this is an Indian guy. Heading to Nepal in a few days. Do you think this was in March? Heading to Nepal in a few days. Do you think I can get the permit for ABC to do it solo if I apply before March 31st? I gave him kind of the same advice. He said he would go ahead and update what was going on, and on his YouTube channel, which you should check out, because he will have more. I don't think he has posted a video yet about it, but he will post. In his original comment, he was like, he's gonna update what's the scene there currently on his channel. So I think he will have better updates, and you should go check his channel out for that. And then 2 days ago, he said I was able to solo trek to ABC, and still today they have not implemented the new rule, so currently trekkers are getting permits to trek solo. That was about 3 days ago. So, yeah, a lot of this depends, or seems to depend on who you talk to, just who you get on certain days or whatever. Yeah, I think that's that's all we can say about it for now. If you go to Nepal and you want to do something like ABC, or you want to do something like Langtang, Langtang is another one that along with ABC, the trekking infrastructure is very set, like it's in place so that it's in place. So if they wanted to implement it in these places, they would have. I don't think they would have any issues doing it. The other big kind of issue with with places like these, when I say issue, the big issue with trying to get in and get out without having to present a guide is like the Lamtang Valley is just one. It's in and out. It's basically one road. So they probably have. I've done this trek. I don't remember where the Tim's. See, the thing is I don't remember where the Tim stations are. I don't even remember if it was open. It probably wasn't, because a lot of places that I've trekked, the Tim's the Tim stations haven't even been open. It's probably somewhere in here, so it's just one straight path in and out, so they can catch you. Okay, what's next on the list? So that was comments from people there. Oh, next we're going to take a look at NTB's website. And we're going to go through their frequently asked questions. FAQs, frequently asked questions about the new provision. Okay, we probably don't need to read this. It's over. What if I want to do ACT or similar treks on mountain bikes? I am going to autocorrect the website, Nepal's website for tourism that is specifically for foreign tourists. I'm going to autocorrect their English. All the treks need to comply with the new rule. You can contact a trekking agency in Nepal for the guide to accompany you in mountain bikes. If you want to do a mountain bike trek, you need a guide. What if I, an experienced trekker and associated to... Okay. What if I am an experienced trekker and associated with a trekking mountaineering association in my home country? The rule is applicable for all foreign national hikers. Whatever. What about such areas as Chame, Muktinath, etc. that require TIMS cards, and just because they lie inside a national park or conservation area? Yes, all the areas need a guide and permits from an agency. Is this rule also applicable when I hike around Kathmandu or to Sarankot? Where do all, oh my gosh, where all are these rules applicable? Where are all these rules applicable? The revised must be followed only while trekking in areas where TIMS is applicable. It is applicable in all national parks, park areas in the mountains. It is not applicable in Kathmandu Valley outskirts, Pokhara outskirts, and hiking areas in and around major cities. So I just wanted to bring this up because I saw a question about this on some sort of like forum or something. And I don't remember what it was. I don't remember what the context was around it, but basically there's a national park north of Kathmandu. This Shivapuri Nagarjun National Park is a national park, and somebody was asking in this comment section of this forum or this post I was looking at if they needed a guide to hike in here, and somebody commented yes. And that is not true. You don't need a guide to hike here or here, like Nagarjun, like this area, Godwari, around Pokhara, probably pretty famously. You don't need it for, even further out, you don't need it for Poon Hill, you don't need it for Dampus. I think there are some areas around here that you don't need it for. Somewhere, I don't know, but you don't need it around these cities. You don't need a guide, thankfully, to hike around these cities. These areas are pretty, but they're really nothing like the Himalayas. Okay. Wait a minute. Sarankot, who? Wait a minute. Nagarjun. Did something about this say Nagarjun? Okay, no, I'm seeing things. Do I have to go via a trekking agency, or is it okay to go as long as I have a guide? It is mandatory to hire a licensed trekking guide through a government-registered trekking agency. Okay. How can I find that out if the trekking agency is legit? How can I know if a trekking agency is legit? Trekking guide must be hired through government registered trekking agency. You can verify information on the trekking. Excuse me. What are the consequences if I do not follow this rule? Not following the rule is a punishable offense. Thanks for the clarity. Is it a fine? Do I just get kicked out of the country? Yeah. Thanks for the clarity. I have no idea what this means. I am a trail runner and a fast packer. No agency specifically provided guides that can keep up with me. Yeah, that's right. What should I do? It is applicable to all. You must ascertain that the trekking agency can provide a guide who matches your specific requirement. Whatever. I am an expat living in Nepal. They're just trying to get around all of the weirdest situations that people would pull. I am an expat living in Nepal. Does this rule also apply to me? Yes, the rule is applicable to diplomats as well as expats. Diplomats. I am Nepali. Does this rule apply to me? Nope. The rule is not applicable to Nepali citizens. Yeah, so good luck up in the mountains. What if I go on a motorcycle ride to Muktinath? The rule does not apply to motorcycle ride or the bus ride to Muktinath. TIMS and Annapurna area permit are required. That's pretty interesting. So actually, it's super interesting. This question was not originally here. So somebody was writing in about whether or not they could go on a motorcycle to Mustang. They're talking about this area? Where's Muktinath? Oh, no, that's Manan. Where's Muktinat? Johnson. Oh, there it is. Here. We're talking about this area. Which is a cool area. I mean, this whole area is super unique to Nepal. But anyway. What if I go on a motor? Yeah, I don't know. We already read this. No, this is interesting because in this circumstance, you would still have to get a Tim's card, but the Tim's, according to one commenter, so we don't. It might not be true, but I take their word for it. The Tims might actually, you could go into one of these places, possibly, be like, yeah, I need a Tims for the Annapurna region. I'm doing a motorcycle ride there. And did they just give it to you, or do you need proof? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Now, we're going to just kind of go over where a lot of these regions are. So this is what NTB offers as where the areas requiring TIMs and permits, which is kind of ironic because, well, I'll get to it. Trekking region, Kanchenjunga. So this list basically goes east to west. Starting in Kanchenjunga, just a short, history of this area in Nepal. Trekking. Kanchenjunga, you always needed a guide. Kanchenjunga is a restricted area. Maybe a long time ago, back, way back, you might not have needed one. Kanchenjunga, you have always needed a guide. It's always been a restricted area. It's very remote. I'm pretty sure that there are areas on this trek where there are no tea houses and you have to tent, just to give you an idea of how far out it is. This is kind of my white whale. Actually, funny enough, I've always wanted to do Kanchenjunga and I have refused to because you've always needed a guide. I never wanted to go with a guide. So I haven't done it. That's the only way to do it. I just, I never really got around to it. Next one is Makalu Barun area. So right to the west, right over here. Yeah. I mean, there's only really one trek that you can do in Makalu that has active tea houses. And everything else is pretty wild. It's really remote. You'd have to tent. You'd have to bring all of your own stuff. You could do it, but it wouldn't be very safe. Next, Everest region. This is wrong. This is false. You do not need a guide for the Everest region. On another Facebook post I saw, there was, I'm pretty sure it was a Nepali guide, claiming that you needed a guide. Listen, I just so there's some transparency. These groups on Facebook, there are a lot of trekking groups on Facebook, and they are filled with people, Nepali trekking agencies just spamming their business. They're supposed to be for these groups, I think are just supposed to be able to connect with other trekkers. If you need a buddy to go on a trek with, if you have questions about different trekking areas, then you can ask, and hopefully, you will get Nepali guides who are knowledgeable about these areas answering the questions, or people that have been before, including Nepali guides. But all it ends up being is just trekking agencies just like spamming for business. It gets really old really quick. And so the original post about Everest, Solukhumbu region that I'm referencing was basically about somebody asking whether or not they needed a permit in the area, and then one of these businesses saying, "Yeah, you do. DM us, and we'll set you up." And then somebody posted, I couldn't find it, but somebody did post an infographic, and it has been confirmed. I couldn't find the infographic. I really wish I had found it, but it was basically the steps that you need to take to be able to trek in the Solukhumbu region, and it was super simple. You needed 2 permits. The way it works is, I think in Kathmandu you can get the like national park permit that they require, and then when you get to the entrance of the park, you buy a little, it's almost like an ID card. And I think the ID card, they have it set up now so that it's all electronic. So it keeps track of when you enter and leave the national park. And then it also keeps track of when you enter and leave the national park. And then it also keeps track of I want to say it's able to keep track of where you are in the park. I don't know how it would do that, but I think that was something that I read on that about that card. But anyway, for Everest region, you don't need this. This rule does not apply. You do not need a guide for Sagarmatha National Park and the Solukhumbu region, which we will get to in a little bit. Next, Rolwaling. It kind of encompasses this area, this darker green here on Google Maps. I don't know what the limits of the Rolwaling area are. I know that the treks that they are referencing here, I believe there's a trek that you can do that takes you up the Gauri Shankar Valley and over this pass, and that brings you into the Sagarmatha region. And actually you can reach Namche Bazaar here. I think that's one of the treks that they're talking about, and then I don't know, I'm not familiar with the other trek that they're referencing. But yeah, not a lot of people trek here. I don't really know a lot about this area. Originally, there was a plan. I did actually at one point want to do this trek where you go up this valley into the Rolwaling, the Gauri Shankar Valley, and cross the pass over into Namche Bazaar. But I am not experienced enough to. Upon further research, I found out that I was not experienced enough to attempt something like that. Okay, so next area. My baby. They got my baby. That's a shame. Panspokari and the Helambu area. This is sad. So this is all up and around here. Helambu is over here, and the Panspokari is... Where's Panspokari? Where's Panspokari? Balupokari? I think... Oh, here it is. See? Like, right there. This trek is so simple, too. And here's a little... here's a little tip. I'm just saying, this could change, but I'm just saying that there is no Tim's checkpoint here. As of 2022, there is no Tim's checkpoint here. So, just saying. Yeah, Helambu and Gosai Kunda. Yeah. I don't know, this past time, obviously when we went to Nepal last, we didn't make it all the way up to Makalu, which is a shame. But doing Gosai Kunda and doing Gosai Kunda and Panspokari seems like, wow, what good timing, because those are really awesome treks, and now you can't even do these. We did Gosai Kunda, not that this, I've mentioned before that this was not a good idea, but we did Gosai Kunda in like 2 days, 3 days total. It's such an easy trek. The trails are super clear. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. Panspokari I can understand a little bit better, because it is like, this is Panspokari is rough. Especially to like new trekkers. Not even the trail itself is not that rough, but the tea house situation is a little, it's a little, it might be overwhelming for new trekkers. Anyway, that's Panspokari. And it's a shame. We knew Lamtang was coming. Obviously, all this area is now gonzo. Here's a surprising one. Ganesh Himal and the Ruby Valley Trek is on here. Now, it's kind of funny because I had never even heard... I knew of Ganesh Himal, but I had never heard of the Ruby Valley Trek. So they're talking about this area here. And I had never heard of this trek until this news came out that they were banning solo trekking. And then everybody was posting about Ruby Trek, Ruby Valley's still open. You can still go to Ruby Valley. According to this, you can't. But if people were pretty confident in saying that, according to Google Maps, I think Google Maps distinguishes national parks with this sort of darker color. And it's kind of non-existent here. Of course, Manaslu does not have that national park around it. So I don't know. Are they just making stuff up? I don't know if this is a national park. The other thing that makes me think that this is actually still probably a decent, like the Ruby Valley trek is probably okay, is because all of those people were talking about it. I wonder if they'll set up a Tim's office, because my guess right now is that there is no Tim's office there. I could be wrong, but that's sort of the vibe I got from that was sort of the vibe I got from people, from what people said. Okay. Next, Manaslu, I mentioned before. Manaslu was another one. Manaslu has always been a restricted area. Same as Kanchenjunga. You always needed a guide to do any of this stuff. Annapurna. Annapurna's the big one. So many easy, beautiful treks are now just gone. Annapurna Base Camp, which I've been lucky enough to do. Mardi Himal is another incredibly easy trek. That is, I've never done it, but I think that's only about 4 or 5 days. You now need a guide for it. And I think Annapurna is like the poster child of what they're trying to do with the new restrictions. Because Annapurna, like I said earlier, it is Annapurna is super accessible. You have all of these roads all around here, so all the access points to different treks in the area. And like I said before, Annapurna has the most visitors, both domestic and foreign, per year. So if you ever want a solo Annapurna trek, it's kind of I mean, the time is probably technically now, because as we've gotten into the comments and stuff, people have said you're still able to do it, but yeah, I think it's the curtain is closing on being able to do this solo. So sad, but sad and just yeah, there's nothing really else to say about it. There are so many good treks. Tilicho Lake up here, the highest lake in Nepal, I believe, is Tilicho. So you need a guide for that. Yeah. Now, there are, well, I guess I'll get into it later. Anyway, next on the list, Mustang. So, Mustang, another area, this area up here. Mustang was always also an area that you needed a permit, you needed a restricted permit, and Mustang holds holds the record, I think, of being the most expensive like trek that you can do in Nepal. I believe it's something like, let me look this up actually, because I don't remember. Nepal Mustang Nepal permits. I think it's like something like $100 a day for the permits. No. Oh, it's $500 for it's $500 for 10 days and then $50 per day after that. So that's a lot of green for Nepal. But this, I mean, it also holds the title of being like the last kingdom, the last Tibetan kingdom, the last real Tibetan kingdom, I think. Lots of really interesting architecture and cultural stuff going on in Mustang, and so sort of like Bhutan, where they have to, they close it off quite a bit to visitors just to sort of save what's going on in the local government and or local communities and things like that, and keep it have upkeep. So that's Mustang. You always needed a permit for that. Dhaulagiri 1 is right here. This is an awesome mountain. This is one where I don't believe you ever needed a permit to do any of this. I think this is outside of the Annapurna zone. I might be wrong, but I thought this was outside of the Annapurna zone. This trek, this circuit is for experienced trekkers only. I don't know exactly where the tea houses stop, but I'm pretty sure. Well, I know that there are no tea. Like there's nothing up here, and the circuit takes you through this kind of wasteland. You have to bring a lot of your own stuff. You needed porters. You probably, if you wanted to do this, you probably should be hiring a guide anyway. But that was, yeah, so that inexperienced people weren't doing this trek to begin with. Dolpo. Dolpo is like this kind of area here. So you can see this dark green Shephuksundo National Park, the Dorpatan. I think it's split into Lower Dolpo and Upper Dolpo. And for a while, Sheifuksundu is not part of Upper Dolpo, I don't think, because you can get in. Well, you used to. You used to be able to get into this national park without a guide. It wasn't a restricted area. You could just go. I think Upper Dolpo is this area kind of over here. So squished between Sheifuksundo and Dhaulagiri. I think that's Upper Dolpo, and that is super remote. That was a restricted area, and you always needed a guide to enter that, like Kanchenjunga, like Manaslu. And then Lower Dolpo holds this hunting reserve where you can go shoot I think they're called blue sheep. I don't think they might be blue, but it's like a dark blue. You used to be able to go shoot stuff here, or you still can. I think that is Lower Dolpo, but those have all been lumped together in the Dolpo region. Actually, that's an interesting question. Where exactly do they... Okay. Upper Dolpo. Interesting. Okay. So let me edit my text here and add one more possible. Interesting. Okay, the last area on the list is Humla. Humla, Nepal is this region. So way, way out in the middle of nowhere. I am actually not super aware of any treks in this area that people were doing. Somebody can correct me, or somebody can shout one out if they want, but I have no idea who is trekking in this area. Or I don't know what they're doing. They might be crossing over into Tibet to do Mount Kailash. I think that is a like a circuit that people do. They'll go all the way to the western part of Nepal, this area where it passes into Tibet, and then go to Mount Kailash. But yeah, that's super remote, and you should probably have had a guide for that area also. So those are the national parks of Nepal where trekking, according to NTB, trekking has now, you need a guide for. Some places you needed it anyway before, some places you didn't, but people are mostly focused on the places that you did not. So, where to start with this? What did I have next? I thought this was funny. I'm gonna go over this now because I just want to clear it off my tabs up here. The Trekking Agencies Association of Nepal. I don't think this has been updated. I just think this is funny. Like, you go to Tim's, like, these people are this agency is supposed to be all about trekking and stuff, and they just have like zero information on here. Like, this information is out of date now. Tim's cards should be collected by both free individual trekkers FITs, which no longer exist, and trekkers taking the service of government offer. Like, that's done. Yeah, like the last updated, they did they update the price? That would be kind of funny. No, they didn't. So this page hasn't been updated in who knows how long. But it's just sort of funny that this website is supposed to be an area where you go to you know, this association and NTB are the ones sort of calling for this change, or putting forth and making this change. You'd think their website would be a little bit more up to date, but anyway, get rid of that. This is just a list. I have this on here for a reason. Why is it? It's the same list, but it's on a different page of the Nepal NTB's website. It says, as per revised TIMS provision, trekkers need to be accompanied by a licensed guide carrying a TIM. Below are the trekking regions and routes falling under this rule. This is not right. This is not. This is incorrect because Everest is still on here. So I don't know. There's just like a ton of confusion around this, and there will continue to be a ton of confusion around this. It's funny, kind of in that original letter that NTB sent, that detailed guidelines for the same shall be published shortly. But where are they? I don't know. Okay. So, enough minging about that. Let's talk about what is left. Well, let's talk about some scraps. I want to get some trekking scraps. I don't want to go to the famous places. I want to go where I still can, and I want to go guideless. And like the other ones, we're going to start from east to west. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go from kind of like smallest places to largest places. And despite this first area not having a ton of information on it, I promise to be more detailed with the other ones. So this one, right in between the Kanchenjunga and the Makalu Barun area, is a place called Topke Gola. Not that. That is different. Topke Gola. So this is super remote. But this whole area in here is not in a national park. So technically, one could go into this area and trek if they wanted to. Obviously, the trekking infrastructure is not there. You'd probably be staying in people's homes, which, actually, to be honest, I don't even know how many villages there are in this area. But I've stayed in people's homes before. Nepali people in remote villages are some of the most humble and accommodating people that you can ever meet. And I mean, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. If you're in a pinch, sure. I speak Nepali, so I can get by a bit better than most people. But it's just sort of it is an option if you have no other options. And just be sure, like, if you were to do that, to just, give them what you can, or give them what you think is fair. Because, like, they will give you the clothes off their back and not expect anything. But yeah, that's just... It's not necessarily, like... You don't have to... Yeah, anyway. If you're going to stay with random people in the mountains, just be sure to be fair to them. And respect their culture. Respect the boundaries. You're in their house. But that's like this area here. It's super remote. I do know that there is trekking outside of Noom, which is the start of the... it is the start of the Makalu trek, this area here. Or, yeah, this... Yeah. Tutse. Chamlang. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, it is here. Yeah, this is Noom. Over here, there are some pretty interesting looking mountains. And from the top of any of these mountains, you would be able to see Kanchenjunga and Makalu. You'd have really great viewpoints from over here. I am just unaware if there of what, if any, trekking infrastructure there is in this area. Okay, so that's this region. It's very, very, very remote. I would not recommend this to like, especially beginners, but I don't think people watching this are beginners. So, next, I guess the most, what is this one? Oh, yeah. Okay. Actually, yeah, wait, what am I doing? I need to go by my list. Our list up here. Top left. First on the list, Ruby Valley. I kind of went over this in the other list, but you probably don't want to sorry. I'm getting distracted. With the Ruby Valley trek, you would go up to Shrabru and you would start the trek from there. And there are guides online as to where you would stay. But like I said before, I don't think there is any Tim's infrastructure here. The only reason to suspect that you would have issues in this area is because of the fact that it is specifically listed on NTB's list of where this thing is being where this rule is being implemented. So, kind of just be aware of that. But my guess is that there's not going to be Tim stations here. I did mark out all of these areas because I thought I would go into more detail, but then this got released and it made me a little less sure about suggesting this to people as a place that you wouldn't get dinged by the new rule. So, but you can find these itineraries online for the Ruby Valley. It's supposed to have really incredible views of Ganesh Himal. It's also supposed to be a pain to get out of because you have all of this. I think there's a road now that goes up to Dwarka. I read some comment there. Somebody might just be, talking nonsense. But I did read that there was a road that went up all the way here. For anybody that, understands about roads in Nepal, you might realize that doesn't really mean anything. It's still going to be 2.5 hours of bumpy roads, and you're probably going to be just as sore getting out of a 2-hour Jeep ride out of these mountains as you would have been doing a full day of trekking. But that's the Ruby Valley. Again, from what I can determine, it seems like a really interesting and beautiful trek, but and like I said before, I'm not super sure how confident I am in recommending it just because it is called out directly on that list. Same can go for our next trek, which I gave a shout out to before, but Ponspokari. The only reason that I would look into this trek, I would see if anybody has done this trek recently after the rules have been applied, because as of 2022, as of March 2022, there were absolutely no Tim's stations. We didn't have to show anything going to Panspokuri. In fact, because we did Panspokuri and Gosai Kunda, and the Panspokuri one was never checked or never signed or something, one of our permits... Oh, we didn't have to buy an extra permit to go to... Man, now I can't remember what it was. Basically, there was nobody to check our things in Panspokuri, so we could have used the same permits to go to Gosai Kunda, because they're technically in the same national park. Yeah. Panspokuri, there are no Tim stations here, which is why I called it out, but yeah. I don't know. Panspokuri is beautiful. And I would absolutely do Panspokuri again. It's like the perfect... It's almost the perfect trek that gets you up into the Himalayas. If you're on like a time crunch, both Panspokuri and Gosai Kunda were like that. It's a day journey out of the city, and then you can start, and then it's like 4 days there and back. I love Panspokuri, but it is on that list, so I would just beware of that. Next, Solukhumbu, the big boy, the one that got away. I'm sure all of these trekking agencies would have loved to have seen Sagarmatha fall under this new provision, because, wow, what a... imagine going through all that work, and then probably like I said before, Annapurna did get wrapped up in this, and Annapurna is the most visited national park, but nobody outside of the trekking world knows what Annapurna is. Everybody knows what Mount Everest is. And if you say you're going to Everest, you're going to Nepal, people who have some idea of what Nepal is will ask you if you're going to hike Everest. Everybody knows. Just name value alone, Sagarmatha National Park gets, it got away. It got away. And the thing is, too, is that there were probably so many more connections that the trekking agencies probably could have made, like getting to Lukla, making journeys like the one I've laid out here, that basically walk you from a jeep where you don't have to fly in. They almost got away with it. But at least for now, I might be, eating my own words come 1 year or something. But they got away with it. They were able to... Sagarmatha was able to escape. Anyway, let's get into my itinerary for what I think is probably right now. If somebody asked me if I want to go to Nepal and do a guideless trek, this is the one I would give them, or I would give them a version of this. So basically. When deciding to go do anything in Sagarmatha, you have two choices. You can fly in to Lukla, or you can get a bus and hike in. I've done the Lukla flight. I don't like it. I am incredibly uncomfortable flying into Lukla for no real reason. Flights to Lukla are totally safe. There's a big meme about it. I mean, it is. Nepal is probably one of the most dangerous... I think it is the most dangerous place to fly in the world. That might not be right. But airplane crashes in Nepal always get a ton of media coverage, even when it has nothing to do in the mountains. A couple months ago, some plane went down right near Pokhara, but I don't think that had anything to do with like it. Planes don't get lost in the mountains, and the pilots for Lukla, the pilots that fly into Lukla are some of the most experienced, like master pilots there are. To be able to do that consistently is incredible. It's a feat. But I don't like being in that little plane. It feels like the plane is on ice. That's sort of how it feels. That has nothing to do with the pilot. That's all about the conditions that you're flying in. You're going over all of these hills that are bringing up wind currents and pushing the plane around. I really don't like it, and I kind of vowed to never do it again. So I had to come up with a plan to never have to do that again. And ironically, the thing is that I'm going to suggest taking a Jeep or taking hiring out a vehicle to get you to the starting point of this trek. That is absolutely more dangerous than taking a plane to Lukla. But that's just I don't like I don't like flying. I don't like flying to Lukla. So let's see. So you're gonna hire a Jeep or a bus or not a bus but a minivan, and you're gonna take it to Dap. And I'm pretty sure I ripped this itinerary from somewhere else. But this ground route to Sagarmatha National Park has been it's been famous for a while for people that don't like to fly, or people that just want to visit the countryside and experience like these little villages and stuff. If you have time to kill, why wouldn't you? I love taking the long way around when I'm able to, and this is a way to do that. Now, typically, you would start from Jiri. So this town here is where you would start from, the ground route. But there's a reason that I did not choose here. Normally, you would go to Jiri, Tose, Bamti, Bandar, and then you would hit up these areas going to not Lukla, but right below. What is this place called? Paya. Oh yeah, Paya to Lukla. Anyway. So that's like the normal trail. I've chosen this one for one very specific reason. So you would hire a Jeep and take it to Dap, and then you would start in on a trail that goes up here to the left. And here is there is an area that you'll see a lot of people talking about this subject bring up, and it's Pikey Peak. If you go onto any of these Facebook posts or forums or whatever talking about areas where you can go guideless, Pikey Peak is one that always comes up. And Pikey Peak is just sort of this trail, because you could actually take a Jeep to Salari and then hike all the way up to Lukla, and that would save you several days. You could probably get there in 2 or 3 days. But just going around here takes you up to this Pikey Peak, which gives you a huge panorama of these mountains. Spoiler alert, I'm going to see the pictures that other people have taken. Um, yeah, so you get this really panoramic view of the mountains. Hold up. Okay. You get this panoramic view of the mountains, and it's sort of an appetizer for what you're going to get um, on this trek. I think going up here, seeing this viewpoint, seeing all these mountains, and then you head back down into the valley to head up there is just such a cool way to experience this trek. If you're going over land, why not just take a couple extra days and get a little taste. Get a little taste of what you're going to experience. So that's my Solukhumbu trekking route. You should go to Dap, start your trek, go to Pikey Peak, head down. You got several things here. I'll just put them on screen for a second so people can see. Junbesi, Ringmo, Juving, and then Paya. And then from Paya, I believe all of this trail is very, very clear, all the way to Lukla. I actually don't think that you even come up at Lukla. I think it might be Phakding that the trail spits you out down here, down this valley. And then from there, it's Solukhumbu. So you can go to your left to Tamu. You can go up this valley. You can do the 3 passes where you go east at Tobushe, go up Dingboshe, do Everest Base Camp, come back down, do the whatever pass this is, I can't remember. Go over to Gokyo-ri. You can just do Gokyo if you want. You can go up to Chukung. As long as you're in this area, you can solo trek. So this is sort of currently the gold mine of areas that you can trek solo. And I would suggest it to anybody. Like, this area is, it is busy. There's always going to be a lot of people, but the infrastructure reflects that. You can get, comfortable places to stay, good meals. Yeah, for people just looking to trek in Nepal, Solukhumbu is where it's at. For those of us that want something a little more off the beaten path, I think that's where this restriction has really. Those are the people that have really felt the tightening of the grip on the trekking world. Okay, Solukhumbu. If you want to do a trek in Nepal and you want to do it guideless, go to Solukhumbu. If you take anything from this video, and in fact, it's probably good because it probably shows, those counting the numbers, that people, one of the reasons that you go to Sagarmatha is because you can solo trek. And if everybody knows that, and goes there for that, it might affect how some of these other municipalities, if they have, I don't know how much control. I know the thing is that Solukhumbu and Sagarmatha, that government, I think, has a lot, that local government, the local municipal government has a lot of control over how they handle the traffic to their area. I don't know how much power these other regions have. I don't know, like Annapurna, I have no idea. Lamtang, I have no idea. But if traffic is drawn away from these places because solo trekking is not available, then it could move those municipalities to take a second look at it. But yeah, I'm not trying to advocate for anything. I'm just thinking out loud. Okay, next on the list, Rara. So here's one a lot of people have not ever heard of because everybody only ever treks in this area, in Annapurna, in Sagarmatha, because they are pretty easy to get to, right? There's no arguing that. The club has a comment. The best time to go, sorry if you've commented this, I haven't had chat open. The best time to go to Nepal is in like from, well, it depends because some of these areas they have a lot of snow. But I mean, you can go as early as February or March. You can go in probably March and April are the best times. And then October through probably September through November are the best times to go for the fall. You don't want to go in the summer. You don't want to go starting in like May and all the way to starting in May and going all the way to I would say like August is maybe when it starts to clear up, but you have the monsoon season all of that time. So the possibility, so like for example, the first time that I went to Annapurna, I think it was July. It was right in the middle of the monsoon season. But we saw mountains. But I know people that have, gone in the summer season and just they couldn't see anything. They were up in the mountains and it was just fog everywhere. You don't want to go in December and January because it's too cold, but you can start looking at kind of towards the end of February, March, April, and then September, October, November. October is prime, November is prime. Everything else is kind of you're risking a few things. Or you're just putting it up to the weather. So back to this. So everybody treks in these areas, right? Everybody treks in Sagarmatha and Annapurna. But all the way out here, past Jomsun, past Annapurna, past Shefoksundo, there's a little place in western Nepal called Rara. This is a national park. Rara Lake is a national park. No worries. But I don't believe I don't think it falls into I don't think it falls into this list. It's not listed here. It's not listed anywhere on here. It's not technically in the Humla region. So we can look at that and just double check. It's outside Humla. It's outside Upper Dolpo, but it is a national park. Rara Lake is maybe one of the most beautiful places. So, okay. First off, I guess up front, I've never been, but I've seen pictures, and we'll look at some pictures. Rara Lake is one of the most beautiful places I think I've ever seen in Nepal. If there's anybody watching from the United States, the United States has incredible national parks. They've always had incredible national parks. And one of the reasons for that is because they're incredibly clean, they're well maintained, and they have a lot of really good infrastructure. Nepal has so many incredible national parks, but it is really depressing to be trekking in Nepal and then you look down and there's like candy wrappers and stuff. And that stuff, it does happen in the United States. It does happen in national parks in the United States, for sure. It happens a lot more in Nepal, though. Rara is so remote Nobody ever goes here. I think there's like one village around here that I think they've even had like disputes with the government about who actually owns this area. Excuse me. But Rara, we're gonna look at some pictures here because this looks like an American national park. Like this picture, right? Like if I told you that this, well, I mean, I could, I could tell you this was anywhere, honestly. I could tell you this was like, I don't know, South America. But there is something about, it is totally undisturbed. You get views of certain Himal. I'm not sure exactly which ones these are. You get these crazy pine forests. It feels a lot like what the Western United States. It feels a lot like the Western United States. A lot of this. But this is a hidden gem, and I think if you want somewhere really remote, that has maintained a really pristine beauty, Rara Lake is like top. Me personally, it's at the top of my list right now. The next time I go to Nepal, I would really like to go to Rara Lake. Now, there are several options for getting there. You probably saw there is an airport, the Talcha airport. In order to get to that airport, I don't believe that there are any direct flights. I think you have to fly from Kathmandu to Birendranagar, I think. Yeah, the Surkhet. Yeah, it is here. So you fly from, I believe you fly from Kathmandu to Surkhet, and then from Surkhet to Rara. That's one way. You can, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could take literally the 48-hour bus ride from Kathmandu to Rara. Literally 48 hours. And I don't know if it takes you all the way there. It might actually just drop you at Kalanga. Oh no, that's right. Actually, to get to Rara, I forgot about this. So you can take, I will finish that thought. You can take a 48-hour bus ride from Kathmandu to Kalanga. It might actually be more than 48 hours. It probably is, actually. And then you hike to Rara, which is like a day hike, or 2 days maybe. And then, you fly from Kathmandu, maybe to Jumla. I don't know if there are direct flights from Kathmandu to Jumla. I remember in old itineraries I would look up about this. Old itineraries would put you in Kathmandu to Birendranagar, and I think it was even another flight to Jumla, but yeah, I'm not sure. Those are basically your two options for Rara. Again, Western Nepal, from what I hear, it's like stepping back in time. A lot of Nepal feels like that. I think Western Nepal is really, really, like, I mean, I'm talking people not, because, I mean, like, you go to a lot of these rural villages in Nepal, like, past this highway, right? There are two main highways in Nepal. Anywhere past this thing, even up in these mountains, even way over here, there are people with cell phones. Western Nepal, I'm not actually sure. There's, I mean, it's really, it is wild. Like, this area of the world is about as close as you could probably get to stepping in a time machine, and going back in time. Other perks of Rara is you're already in Western Nepal. So I know a lot of people might not go to go. A lot of people planning on going to Nepal might not actually know this at first, but Nepal has an incredible like wildlife safari. Like, I'm talking like real wildlife. No, I'm not talking about like a gated area and you take a bus through the gated area. I'm talking like real national parks. Nepal is home to elephants, like wild elephants, rhinos, crocodiles, gharials, dolphins, tigers, jaguars, or no, leopards, not jaguars, leopards, bears. There's like a whole, and like obviously deer, but nobody cares about deer. There's a whole lot of wildlife in in Nepal, and you can see a lot. Everybody goes to Chitwan, which is down here. That's Parsa. Where's Chitwan? Where's Chitwan? I think it's this area. Yeah, I don't know why it's not designated on this map. Chitwan National Park is where everybody goes because it's the most easily accessible. But if you go all the way out to Rara, and especially say, if you're young, because I would not suggest getting on a 48-hour bus ride for like super old people. There are super old people that trek in Nepal. If you're like young and you want the experience of going on a 48-hour bus ride, it's not like terrible just because you have options. You have when you take the bus, you can kind of like get off anytime you want and kind of like make your trip as you go. You can visit Bardia also, and Bardia it's like you are way more likely to see a tiger. Everybody I know, and I know, a couple people that have been to Bardia. Everybody that has been to Bardia has seen a tiger. So if you're interested in seeing a wild tiger on your trip to Nepal, and you want to do some solo trekking in Rara, you can go to Rara, see this beautiful place, do a circuit around the lake, and make it into a whole thing where you go to Bardia, check out what's going on there. You can see tigers, everything with that. So that's Rara, or that's the Rara kind of like itinerary. As for like trekking, I'm sure you can do like little day treks around here. And it looks like, even just from the pictures and elevations, it seems like some of these areas around here are probably higher than Rara is. But yeah, Rara is a beautiful area, and yeah, that's another one for the list. Let me pop this out, and I'm not going to. Okay. Next, Gauri Shankar. I kind of brought this up earlier. I don't know what the deal with this area is. This seems off limits. So Gauri Shankar is basically split by this river, and then the east side of the river is Rowaling, and then the west side is just kind of whatever. It's Gauri Shankar, I guess. I don't know how it's split, and I don't really know how Rowaling is determined. But this area is off limits. The area to the east is off limits without a guide. The area to the west is possibly open. I don't know, because I don't know if this is technically Rowaling. This is all according to Google Maps, this is all Gauri Shankar. So I don't actually know. But one trek on here that I am actually going to link a video to, this other YouTube channel that does really, really good work, is Gumante. This channel. So they're obviously pretty big, but they make really good trekking documentaries about pretty niche trekking destinations in Nepal. Panspokri is on here. They did Panspokri. But I mean, we're talking like way out west. Saipal is super west. I think they did Apidana. They did Pikey Peak. I know they did Apidana, which is way, way west. But I would highly recommend subbing to these guys. I don't know why I'm not subscribed. This is not my main YouTube, that's why. I would highly recommend subscribing to these guys and watching some of these areas, because a lot of where these guys talk about falls out of these regions, because they are a little weird to get to, and they don't have that trekking infrastructure. But one of the places that they did was Deodunga. This is right here, and it's technically in this Gauri Shankar Reserve, I believe. But I'm pretty sure you can get here pretty easily. So the route looks like you would take a bus, or you would hire a jeep from Kathmandu to Barabise, and then you would begin the trek from there. And my guess is it's probably a 2 to 3 day, probably like safely a 3-day trek, but you would probably want to take 4. But this thing up here looks so incredible. I'm just gonna get to it real quick. So spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what this place looks like. Swarup Dekyo. So you get a view of the Himalayas, but the thing is that there's a temple up here that is like built into this giant stone outcropping. It's super cool. It's just so unique looking. I would really like to do this trek at some point, just because it's so like there's kind of nothing like it. Obviously, you don't get super close to the mountains. You don't get the snow-capped peaks like right in your face. But it is like a really unique place to go in Nepal, and yeah, it offers that trekking. Next, so that's all I have for Gauri Shankar. I have one more. I'll get to that in a sec. Western Nepal. So we pointed out where Humla is, which is this area here. But this area here is also not in any protected area. It's sort of similar to what I was talking about the first one, this area between Kanchenjunga and Makalu. This square here is not in a protected area, and it doesn't fall into any of that. It doesn't fall into anywhere that you need a guide, which is super ironic, because because it's so isolated, if anybody does go here, the likelihood of them getting lost seems super likely. The likelihood of somebody going here, well, the likelihood of somebody going here is probably pretty small, but somebody that goes and just doesn't know what they're doing and then gets lost or dies out here seems super high to me. I don't know why you wouldn't just default and say, yeah, if you want to do Bobaye or Jeti Baurani, you need a guide. That seems so apparent to me, but I don't make the rules. But anyway, all of this area, I don't have anything specific for this area, but I'm sure somebody has made some sort of guide for some trek out here. To my knowledge, I don't know about anything, and I think maybe the reason to why they decided to leave it out is because the trekking infrastructure is essentially non-existent. I said before that this is like one of the most remote areas in the world, and I stand by that. That's pretty true. Like trying to get to these areas is a nightmare. Again, it's more than 48 hours on a bus. That's for sure. But yeah, that's Western Nepal. That is technically open if you want to go there. And then finally, second to last, kind of second to last, but the last big one is Fuxundo. This is an incredibly beautiful national park. From all the pictures I've seen, it's just a lot of super blue glacial lakes. And NTB's guidelines don't say anything about it. The closest that they have are these. I don't know where Kagmara is. And neither does Google Maps. But Dolpo is like here. Upper Dolpo is here. Lower Dolpo is here. I don't know why NTB would, if they counted Fuxundo in the Dolpo region, I don't know why they wouldn't say Fuxundo trek or circuit or something. But ostensibly, you can go trekking here and not have to hire a guide. Which is, if that's true, that's pretty rad. Because this is like a really beautiful area. It has a lot to offer. And it might be the only option like west of... it might be the only option west of Dhaulagiri that you can, like, it's in a national park. You can do a multi-day trek within the national park, and you don't have to worry about hiring a guide. So that's it. So that is the state of trekking in Nepal. I did want to mention this one only because it's got a funny name. Meme Pokery. It's not meme. It's probably pronounced meme. But this is also sort of in the Pons Pokery situation. I don't think this is part of either of these areas. I think you can actually probably do this one without a guide. Meme Pokery. I will point you back to Gumante because they did a video on it. I saw it earlier. There it is. Meme Pokery. So that is one. That's probably the closest to Annapurna that you can get. without needing a guide, and it's somewhere off the beaten path. Just, I guess one final thing, because I just remembered it. Annapurna, if you want to view these mountains, there are still treks that you can do outside of the zone where you would need a guide that you can go. So you can go to Dampus. That's a very famous like lookout point for the Annapurna range. You can go to Poon Hill, which is over here. Poon Hill is where'd it go? Gorpani is basically near where it is. But there's another area. Poon Hill is another area. That's like a 4-day trek that you can go and view all of these mountains. But I think that might be about it for me. Hopefully, this has given people a bit of insight. I will say that as time goes on and the rules get locked down a little bit more, I think you're going to see, and I said this in the original video too, I think you're going to see more areas pop up online in circles discussing trekking in Nepal without a guide. You're going to see more and more things pop up where there will basically be guides there are basically going to be guides for how to avoid using a guide. There's going to be lists of areas that you can go, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody also like trying to keep up to date with where TIM stations are opening or opened, if they weren't there before and they are there now or whatever. But I think that's sort of what's going to happen. I will say too, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I can keep rambling for a little bit. There's like one or two other things that I wanted to talk about, but I mean that's like the main part of the video. I think I'll probably stop recording myself right now. But if anybody wants to ask questions about Nepal, about traveling there, I don't know, like prices of stuff, you can ask whatever. I don't really care. I'll talk about it. But I just wanted to throw that out there before I start going into kind of this other stuff. One thing I will talk about is areas around Nepal that offer good trekking. So Sikkim is one. We have a couple videos from Darjeeling on my channel, but we have not been able to trek here. It seems to be the case that Sikkim has basically two major trekking areas. The Kanchenjunga, which you can do on the Nepal side as well, but their Kanchenjunga has a lot more infrastructure to it. You can do that. And then I don't really know much about Yumthang, but I'm sure that has its own infrastructure as well. Bhutan. So Bhutan famously is a very expensive country to get into. It also has some of the most incredible trekking that you can do. Bhutan, you also need a guide to do a lot of the trekking. So in my mind, in my mind, if you have to hire a guide, you might as well go ham on what you want to do there. And one of the treks in Bhutan is I don't remember exactly I think it's called the Snowman Trek. But it basically takes you east to west. It takes you all the way through the Bhutanese mountains. And I think you end or start in Paro, and then you end and start in Trashigang, my guess would be. It's like a 24-day trek. You need a guide, and it's incredibly expensive. But for those reasons, less people have done that trek than have climbed to the top of Everest. Now, these days, climbing to the top of Everest isn't like the craziest thing in the world. But, and more people do it each year, it seems like. But if you really want something that nobody's done before, the Snowman Trek through Bhutan, if you have the cash and you have the will, because I think also a lot of people fail doing that trek as well. But Bhutan has some really good trekking. It's just it's so expensive to get there and do anything that a lot of people don't end up doing it. On the other side, we're getting into a bunch of stuff that I don't know about, but Himachal Pradesh especially, but Uttarakhand also are supposed to have some really incredible trekking, and it's all in that Himalayan range. So if you're looking for something in the Himalayas to trek to, then yeah, go for it. I think that about does it. I think that's everything I wanted to say about the topic. I'm glad that some people showed up. I was looking at some of the concurrent viewers. It was nice to see that some people showed up who are interested. Like I said before, I'm going to cut this up, put it on a video, or make it a full video on my channel, but it probably won't have all of the information that I discussed here because it's been like 2 hours. So anyway, thank you for joining. If you want, like the stream or subscribe for more. To be honest, I don't know how much more Nepal content I'll be doing unless something drastically changes and I have stuff to talk about, or we go back to Nepal again. Yeah, I make weird travel videos, kind of anti-travel videos, I guess, at this point. But yeah, thanks for joining, and I'll see you later.